Hi guys, it's me. I'm back with a international episode of Three Good Things, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here with one of my favorite people and favorite writers, Gilly Macmillan. She is hailing from, is it Bristol?
Yes,
Yes,
Bristol, east of England.
in the UK. And of course, we're taping this a little bit early, so by the time you see this, it'll be like a couple weeks from now. But today is the on sale date for To Tell You the Truth, which is Jilly's absolutely fantastic new book. It's so unsettling and twisty and just completely immersive, like all of her books. And so we're going to just start off talking a little bit about this because there are some things we need to discuss. And my poor husband poor Jeff is going to be really unhappy by the time this is over. So I'm not going to give too much away about this book because there's so many layers, and I think one of the fun things about this book is just kind of exploring the layers of this main character and her, like, sort of, I guess I'm not giving anything away by saying her imaginary friend, because that comes up quite early in the book, but also her husband, Chili. He so the main character of this book, and I'm sure there's a question in here somewhere. I'm not just going to keep talking like this, although I could. So the main character in this book is a very successful thriller writer, and she has this husband who kind of manages the, like, sort of business end, or like social media marketing end, and accounting end of their life slash business. And he's not such a great guy. And I so most of you guys know that my husband Jeff does a lot of stuff for me, social media, accounting, all that stuff. So I kind of started to get a little bit nervous. I mean, this is like a really, like, scary gaslighting husband. And I started to wonder if my husband is gaslighting me. I don't think he is, but how would you know? that's the real,
Don't ask your characters.
that's the real question. Like, I was like, the more I read this, the more paranoid I became. Sorry, honey. I know it's not true. He's a wonderful guy. But anyway, talk to me a little bit about this scary husband.
Well, I very much wanted to make a crime writer my main character because I was looking for an unreliable narrator. And I thought long and hard about all different types of characters I could use. And eventually I kept circling back to a fiction writer. Because
the most unreliable person of all.
You didn't hear it from me, but we spend a lot of time in a fictional world, and I think we're those of us who write a book a year, like my character Lucy, we're under a lot of pressure sometimes with deadlines, and it's hard. And that made me think, well, how can I really kind of squeeze more tension out of that? So I thought, well, what if the husband works for her? What if this writer is very, very successful and her husband is elected to support her? But what that means is she's taken her eye off the ball. She's not really keeping track of what he's doing. He's encouraging right. He's facilitating that. And she's feeling pretty comfortable. She trusts him. But maybe she shouldn't. So she sort of, at the beginning of the book, she kind of emerges from finishing a book, which has been the most challenging book she's ever written. Right. And she kind of comes out of the writing den and looks around and finds that things aren't quite how they should be, or quite what she was expecting. Right. And she wonders what he's been up to. And then he disappears. And that's when the plot really kicks off. But yeah, I wanted to look at that intense relationship. It's about trust. It's a classic domestic suspense trope, but I've kind of made it professional trust as well as personal trust.
Right, and it's always complicated, in any marriage when those two, sort of layers of self kind of merge, and Jeff and I have been working together for I guess like about 15 years now, in this capacity where he kind of manages, like, sort of the business and side of things, and I do as well, but he's like kind of a helpful helpful friend. You know, he's like what we call him. He's my guy in the chair.
Oh, I like that.
And it's great, but like it's interesting like how like when I was reading this I was like how quickly this could go wrong, and then all of a sudden like I kind of found myself like, you know, I'm always like signing things that he puts in front of me, you know, like the total cliche of like the trusting wife.
Same. My husband does various accounting things for me.
Yeah.
And you know, he says, "Oh, could you just transfer some money here, or could you just, and could you just?" And I, you know, most of the time I check, but not
Not
always. And
always. I mean, it
because
can
you know,
that
easy it would be for him. Yeah, 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 yeah. That's
yeah.
too easy for them to maybe take advantage of that, and how awful that would be.
Oh, wouldn't it be horrible? It's lucky they're such good guys.
Indeed.
So we think. Anyway,
So we hope.
or so we hope.
But I have to say, I thought I wrote the worst husband in the world until I picked up your new book, and he gives my husband a run for his money. Let me just show everybody Lisa's book, which
Ah,
is
yes, that is
the
coming very soon in October.
yeah. And so, if you enjoy a tale about a potentially difficult husband,
Potentially.
Confessions is where you need to go. So
But
good.
yeah, that husband has a lot of layers too, and it's hard because you know always are so mean to our husbands in crime fiction, but I think that maybe that has to do with you know the truth of it is that you know violence and crime against women you know generally comes from the men that you trust the most in your life. So it's the brother, the husband, the father, the person that's already in the house from whom you have the most to fear. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's probably why we wind up going there as crime fiction writers as often as we do.
Yeah, and the stakes are so high, especially if there are
Right.
children
Oh
involved.
my God.
And you know, it's not just your financial future potentially; it's everything, isn't it? Destroy you emotionally, psychologically. The power is extraordinary within a married dynamic.
Absolutely. And it's also such a perfect opportunity for gaslighting because, you know, there is so much trust and there's so much shorthand and there's also like a lot of baggage, like especially when you've been together with somebody for a long time, you have this like shared history and this shared understanding and then like sort of a shared knowledge of each other's flaws. And it would be very easy, you know, in that within that power structure for it to kind of shift or tip and you know for one person to manipulate the other person.
I was thinking about that as I developed the character in this book because I have a very bad memory. I don't remember a lot. And my husband has an excellent memory. And it would be really easy for him to convince me that something did or didn't happen,
Yeah.
you know, because I'm a blank for a great deal of stuff. I'm so focused on what I'm doing now and what I want to do next. I don't retain a great deal about what I've done.
Yeah,
And I
and
so,
also
yeah,
your brain is so engaged in creation. Like, you know, the writer's brain is always staging, setting scenario, you know, unraveling plot. It requires a tremendous amount of brain energy and focus. And so there sometimes is not a lot left over for, you know, the business of running a life, depending on how intensely you're in your writer's headspace.
and that makes creatives vulnerable. I was also thinking a lot about how many you know, actors and musicians find themselves robbed of their money by, you know, managers and things like that. Because, and I didn't understand that until I began a career as a writer, and I started to understand how loose my grasp was on
Yeah.
all of that stuff, and how much it would take for me to have a really complete grasp of it. You know, it's sort of beyond while I'm writing a book a year.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so interesting. Well, so part of this uh, little show that I've been doing, I guess we're calling it a show,
Mhm.
is it's called Three Good Things, and part of the reason for that is that we're talking a little bit about, you know, favorite books and you know shows and recipes and stuff. It started at the beginning of the pandemic as a way to um, kind of put some positivity out there, and when you turn on your computer is basically just like a barrage of negativity. So this was part of my plan, but everybody's loving it so much, like these, fun little chats with my, my author friends who I miss very much. I mean, multiple times a year we'd see each other, probably at, this place or that place. So it's kind of, you know, my way of connecting with people that I would have seen now can't right now. But so just to sort of keep with that tradition of like book recommendations, is there anything that you're reading right now other than, of course, Confessions on the 745?
Yes, indeed. There is another book, and I picked this one because I saw on Instagram that there was a coincidence that affected you and I, because you mentioned a book called The Confidence Game by Maria Konnikova in relation to Confessions on the 745. So I had literally just finished this when I read your post, and this is
I haven't read it yet. I am dying to read that.
Oh,
is it?
It's so good. It's packaged a bit like a self-help book, and it works. It says on the front how I learned to pay attention, master myself, and win. And there's lots in it for self-help.
That's cool. Excellent.
But what I loved it for is it's the story of how she decided to learn to be a professional poker player in 1 year. And it reads like a gripping novel. Yeah, it's all of the roller coasters, the peaks and the troughs. She gets a mentor who's one of the world's best players to help her, and there's so much she has to battle, like the usual misogyny and everything, as on top of all the rules of the game, and learning how to bluff and how to manage her composure at the table. It's a brilliant book. I inhaled it in 2 days, and I should have been writing my own novel. So, The Biggest Bluff by Maria Konnikova is my recommendation.
Oh, that is an excellent recommendation. So yeah, her book, The Confidence Game, was a big source for me during the writing of Confessions on the 745. The idea for Confessions kind of came actually quite a long time ago, like the sort of germ for it, which was like I had heard this idea that you can't con an honest man.
Mm-hmm.
And that like sort of kicked around in my head a little bit, and I wound up bringing it up, strangely enough, in a green room before I was supposed to go on stage with Megan Abbott and Ruth Ware and a couple of other authors. And I brought it up to Megan, and she said, I don't know about that. She said, that sounds like victim blaming to me. And I was like, yeah, I hear that. And then I just started, but it just kept kicking around in there, how ideas tend to. And I came to arrive at this idea that you can't con somebody who doesn't want something.
Yes. And we all want something, don't we?
We all want something. And so that was one of her points in her book, The Confidence Game, was that we're all vulnerable. And the less we think we're vulnerable, the more vulnerable we are.
Right. So the confidence man or woman has to find what we need.
Right. They have to, that's their special gift. They probably know it before you even know it yourself, what it is that you want. Like they have this, there are these certain types of people that have this gift for picking up your various cues from everything that what you say and what you don't say, what you wear, where, depending on how competent their surveillance is, where you shop, where you go to school, whatever, like they can discern your desires and wants, even if you don't know.
Yeah.
What's
it's very creepy, isn't it? It's very scary. And it's so good in Confessions.
Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy exploring, those types of personalities, because I don't think, I always feel like, there's not so great a difference, like I heard Meryl Streep interviewed once, and they, the interviewer had asked her, how do you so inhabit your characters? And she said that she believed that within every person was the germ of every other person. And I think that it's very easy to empathize with people, even the darkest and most deranged characters that we happen to run into. It's easy to empathize and it's also kind of easy to understand where they might be coming from. And it's for me, it's one of the biggest fascinations of my life is how do I, how do people become what they are?
Yes,
What
what makes them
we are.
turn a corner? What's the incident or whatever it is that makes them take that step from the
Right.
right thing to something manipulative? Yeah, it's fascinating as thriller writers, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it was especially fascinating in your book, especially. I guess we maybe could talk a little bit about it, about this other layer to the main character, her her friend, or
Yes.
her childhood friend. I guess we should call
So my
it.
main character, Lucy, had an imaginary friend as a child called Eliza. Um, but when we meet her as an adult, it turns out Eliza's still with her, except that Lucy has turned Eliza into the main character um, in her best-selling novels, and Eliza is now loved by all of Lucy's readers. But importantly, she's still communicating with Lucy, and it's not always easy. And because Eliza knows all kinds of things, and she's known everything about Lucy since Lucy was very, very young, and she knows perhaps more than Lucy might know about things that happened when Lucy was a child. For example, the disappearance of her brother.
Yeah, that is so that idea of this, it's there's a book that I turn to again and again for research called The Inner World of Trauma by Dr. Donald Kalshad.
Mhm.
And he also writes another book called Trauma and the Soul. Um, just some light reading if anybody's interested.
I'm like, yes, yes. I'm going to devour that.
Uh, and he talks about in Trauma and the Soul, he talks about it's a sort of a Jungian concept of like the inner companion, but he talks about it in the form of the imaginary friend that comes in times of great trauma to a child, and it might come in the form of a person or become in the form of an animal. And then as the child grows and becomes whole or repairs from the trauma, or sort of finds a different type of inner companion, then the imaginary friend or the animal is released, in a sort of sad but like necessary parting, right?
Mhm.
If not, then the imaginary friend later in life can become almost like like a negative feature in the psychology of the adult.
And I think that's where my character is. She has not resolved her childhood trauma. She has not let go of Eliza. She might have made her into a character in a book, so kind of acknowledging that she's a made-up person to
Right,
a point, but she can't let go of. And in fact, she's trying to. She would
right,
like to, but she doesn't know how to exist without her.
right, exactly. Yeah, it's fascinating. Okay. So we're all like sort of obsessed with story. Obviously, we're all big readers, and all writers are readers first. That's where we fall in love with story in the pages of somebody else's book. And so, hopefully, as we can maintain that love of reading and like love of all stories. And so, is there anything, and that sort of extends to television and film as well. I mean, I think that, our generation of writers is probably the first generation of writers that is as influenced by film and television as we were by books. It's
Yes.
like those kind of iconic stories that, sort of defined our childhood or whatever, could be found in multiple different mediums. So is there anything for you right now that you're watching, or is there something that's beloved kind of that you go back to again and again for comfort?
Yeah, the movie I go back to for comfort, and I watch it with my daughter, who's in her 20s now, but she's home with us. She has been home with us during lockdown, and we watched Moonstruck, the movie with Cher, the big Italian family in Brooklyn, and I could watch it on repeat for the rest of my life. I love it so much. It's so well written and
It
so
is such a brilliant
acted.
movie.
Oh, it's wonderful, isn't it? So we've watched that a couple of times. The men in the family aren't quite so keen, but for me, it's really special. I just love every line of it.
Oh, I'm gonna watch that with Ocean. I don't think I have watched that with her. That is like one of my all-time favorites. And I, came from a big Italian family
Yeah,
in Brooklyn.
it's perfect.
So like there's a lot of comfort to be drawn even from the madness of that family.
And it is nuts, isn't it? It's a crazy film.
It is. It's totally crazy. We're gonna watch that tonight. I'm gonna guarantee it because that
Oh,
is
I'm jealous now.
she's gonna love it. Yeah, I mean, and Ocean and I we will watch things over and over and over and over again like that. My husband is like, no, I'm not watching this again. He like leaves the small group. But we will watch things over and over. So that is, I think she's gonna love that for sure.
I hope she does. I hope so. She must. It's the rule.
She will.
Yeah.
She's a total goofball, just like me. We're both like completely like, into like big sort of funny, silly stories, which I think Moonstruck definitely is. Although, I mean, it does have a real, it has a real beating heart too.
Oh, I think so. I think it's got lots of layers. I mean, it's super silly in some ways, but it's got lots of layers, and the whole family theme I absolutely love.
Nicolas Cage is just brilliant.
Yes.
Oh my God, I can't wait. I can't wait to watch it. So also, and I think that we were talking about this right before I hit record. And I think that, these months have been so challenging and so, so dark for so many people. But like as parents, I think it's been kind of a gift in some ways to have so much time with your kids. I mean, I know in your case, your kids are older, but my daughter's 14 and we've always spent a lot of time together, but I get the sense that, high school, she's going into high school and, once things kind of return to normal, her life is going to expand again. And we'll have less, we'll look back on this time as a kind of a gift in a way that we had this extra time with our kids and our extra family time. And so in our family, we're cooks. We like to cook. Cooking all the time is like kind of a good thing for us. We're happy to be doing it. Are there cooks in your family, or is there something that, is there like a go-to meal or recipe that you guys have? Or
We're all cooks, more or less. There's some fussy people in my family. Max, it's you. And there's a couple of new vegetarians, which is good actually, because we've all been going in that direction. So we've had to do a bit of menu adjusting, but it's the first time that everyone's really shared the cooking actually, which has been really nice. But if I were to pick one thing that I cook that everybody will eat pre-vegetarian, because we haven't found that dish since people have become vegetarian, it would be, I'm going to the Italian theme again, it'd be Italian meatballs. I have a really lovely recipe I've been making since they were babies. And we made that a couple of times in lockdown and they did eat that. And it's just an ultimate comfort food. It takes all day to make and, it's devoured in minutes.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big one for us too. I mean, of course, my grandmother, I learned a lot of my Italian cooking from her. She just passed away a couple of years ago. She was 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she lived in the same neighborhood where she lived her entire life, and across the street from the church where I was christened and my parents were married. And so, I got a lot of my Italian, and from my mom too. She's not Italian, but she is an excellent cook. But, between the two of them, I have this like, this kind of osmosis knowledge of like how to make a marinara and meatballs and sausage and chicken parm and all that stuff. So that is for sure for us one of our go-to as well. Like the ultimate comfort. I mean, the ultimate comfort food for sure.
Yeah. Ultimate family food as well. Yeah.
And also better the next day. So you make a giant pot and then freeze it and all that stuff. So it really is like such a great meal on so many different levels.
We do love leftovers in our house. Well, most of us do.
It's a lot of leftovers these days. It's a lot of
baking. We all had to watch our waistlines. People are baking.
Yeah.
And the kids have the metabolism to be able to eat the cake, and I have to be way more careful, which is tragic.
It's tragic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And baking is such a comforting activity too, and it's something you probably did all the time with your kids when they were little, because it's baking is like it's a treat and it's an activity,
It's so
like
true, isn't
the
it?
mixing and everything and then the decorating of things afterwards and stuff like that. So Ocean and I have done that forever, like, as long as I can remember with her and or definitely as long as she can remember. So like
Yeah.
that's for her that's for her like, such a comforting thing like, oh, let's make cookies or let's make cupcakes and
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
We're
so nice.
also part-time vegan vegetarian as well. So we try to like do some vegan baking, which is actually way easier than you would imagine, like with olive oil, butter, and like, dairy-free chocolate and stuff like that. Like
Is it tasty?
yeah.
I'm skeptical. It is, okay.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, all kind of experimenting a little bit with that stuff too. So do you have, okay, so one more time, your book,
And now, Leslie says,
yeah, and that was out on October 6th. And so I guess, are there any places that you're going to be appearing virtually, other than here with me?
not currently. I'm not in the US. There's some other places, but yeah, not
Yeah.
currently. I'm waiting to
Okay.
see.
So, in your website is just gillymacmillan.com.
That's it. That's absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah, and so you can find out everything you ever wanted to know about Gilly and
true.
also her amazing books. And last year it was The Nanny, which was every bit as awesome and immersive and twisty and atmospheric as her new one. So definitely check out the backlist as well. And Gilly, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing yourself and your thoughts. And I know everybody's gonna love meeting you and hearing about your books and about you.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to chat with you.
Awesome. Thanks again, and can't wait for this to go on sale. To tell you,
Final. And this one, Snap. Bad husbands.
forget it. Bad husbands. Bad husbands.
We're happily married, rest assured.
I
We
love
think we
our
are.
four husbands. Our four husbands are wonderful. We should just go on record as saying that they're just good,
Yes.
or so we think.
Yes. Yeah.